The envelope wasn't heavy, just wrong. It sat on the counter, like it had been waiting for me, the courthouse seal half smudged by someone's thumb. The paper inside smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and cigarette smoke, the mix my Aunt Linda always carried on her clothes. I should have opened it right there, but I didn't. Beat. Because part of me still believed promises were stronger than paper. It started 6 weeks after her funeral. Linda was my dad's older sister, the kind of woman who called the post office a second home because she loved mailing people things. Cards, recipes, even old family photos she'd make duplicates of for no reason. She didn't have kids, and after my parents split, she sort of adopted me by default. She was the one who showed up to my high school graduation when my father didn't, the one who slipped me her car keys the day I got laid off from the tire shop and couldn't make rent. And she was the one who said more than once, "When I go, the house is yours, Drew. That place should stay in family hands." She lived just outside of Asheville, 2-story farmhouse with a wraparound porch and a view of the Blue Ridge that looked painted on. The last time I saw her alive, she was sitting in that porch swing, hair pinned up, coffee cup balanced on the armrest, telling me to stop worrying about her health. "I'm too stubborn to die yet," she said. That was Linda. Kind, blunt, funny, and so certain about everything. Then her heart gave out in her sleep one Thursday morning in early April. I got the call from her neighbor, a retired electrician named Gus. I drove straight up the mountain road that day, the same one I used to bike as a kid, engine groaning, rain streaking sideways across the windshield. I didn't even have to knock. Gus just nodded toward the porch. Her coffee was still there, half a mug gone cold. The funeral was small. Just church folks, old coworkers, and me. No other close family left. My dad was long gone. Her cousins out west never visited. I stayed a few days after, helping Gus box up her things and signing off on the county paperwork. When the lawyer told me the estate was simple, just the house and her savings, I didn't even question it. He said probate would take a month or two. Then he'd call. That call came last Monday. I was in my apartment in Greenville, trying to fix a clogged sink with a bent wire hanger when my phone buzzed. The number was local to Asheville. "Mr. Wallace," a calm woman's voice said. "This is Beth from the county clerk's office. I'm calling about property transfer documents concerning the late Linda Carter." I wiped my hand on a towel. "Yeah, that's my aunt." "Right. I just wanted to confirm that you received the certified deed transfer that was mailed to your address on file." "I did," I said, staring at the unopened envelope on my counter. "It came yesterday. Haven't looked. Yet." "Well, once you review it, you'll see everything's been properly recorded. If you have any disputes, there's a 90-day window." "Disputes?" I repeated. "Why would I have a dispute?" Her silence was too long. "You'll see what I mean, Mr. Wallace." Click. It took me 10 minutes to tear the flap open. The paper was crisp, notarized, with the embossed seal catching the kitchen light. My name wasn't on it. The new owner of 114 Hemlock Road was listed as Mary Ann Fields. I had never heard that name in my life. At first, I thought it was a typo. I scanned the pages again. The legal description of the property, the parcel number, the boundary lines, the signatures. Linda's handwriting was there, dated 2 months before she died. Witness signatures followed. One name I recognized, the other I didn't. My stomach sank. It wasn't a mistake. I must have called the lawyer 6 times before someone picked up. "Carter and Duval Law. This is Sandra." "It's Drew Wallace. My aunt's estate case. Linda Carter? You handled her will." A pause. "Yes, Mr. Wallace. I remember. How can I help?" "I just got the deed transfer. It says the house went to someone named Mary Ann Fields. That can't be right." Pages flipped. "One moment." Beat. According to our records, that deed was executed and recorded before Ms. Carter's passing. It wasn't part of the estate distribution. So she gave the house away before she died? That appears to be the case. But to who? Who the hell is Marianne Fields? I'm afraid I can't disclose personal information about another client, sir. She wasn't a client, I snapped. She was my aunt's heir. This woman, whoever she is, stole that house. Sandra's voice softened, professional but distant. If you believe there was undue influence or fraud, you can file a petition to contest the transfer. You'll need counsel. Then the line went dead. That night, I barely slept. I sat at the table with the deed spread out in front of me like a crime scene photo. The signature looked shaky. Linda's loops were tighter, more deliberate. This one dragged, especially on the L. I found an old birthday card she'd written me, to my favorite nephew, keep your head up, and held it beside the document. The difference was clear to my eyes, but what did that matter legally? She'd signed it. It was notarized. By morning, I decided to drive back to Asheville. The road curved through fog, each mile taking me closer to the place that used to smell like honeysuckle and fresh paint. When I pulled up the gravel driveway, the first thing I noticed was the mailbox. Freshly painted, name replaced. M. Fields. There was a car in the driveway. A silver Toyota Camry, late model, with a car seat in the back. The porch swing had been rehung, but the cushions were new. Someone had moved in. I parked behind the Camry and sat there, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. The house looked both exactly the same and completely foreign. The curtains were different, thicker, beige instead of floral. There were flower pots by the steps that weren't Linda's. Then the door opened. A woman stepped out, early 40s, brown hair tied up, wearing a cardigan over a faded t-shirt. She spotted me immediately and froze halfway down the steps. For a second, neither of us spoke. "Can I help you?" she called, her voice cautious. "I'm Drew Wallace," I said, stepping out of the car. This was my aunt's place. Her expression shifted. Recognition? Guilt? "Oh," she said slowly, "you're Linda's nephew." "Yeah, and you are?" She hesitated. "Marianne." The name hit like a slap. "You're the one on the deed." "I am," she said, almost apologetic. "Linda told me about you." I felt my throat tighten. "Really? Because she sure as hell never told me about you." Marianne's hand went to her neck. "Maybe we should talk inside." I should have refused. I should have told her to get off the porch, to explain herself where the whole neighborhood could hear. But curiosity won. I followed her in. The house smelled different, cleaner, colder. Gone were the cinnamon candles and cluttered shelves of teacups. Everything was stripped down, modernized, almost sterile. The old Afghan Linda crocheted was gone from the couch. The photo of me at graduation, gone. Only the bones of the house were the same. Marianne gestured to the armchair. "Please." I didn't sit. "You want to tell me how you know my aunt?" She folded her hands. "We met at church a few years ago. She started coming after her diagnosis." "What diagnosis?" Marianne's eyes flickered. "You didn't know?" I shook my head. She was dealing with early onset dementia. That word hollowed me out. "No," I whispered. "That's not possible." She was sharp. She remembered everything. "She had good days," Marianne said gently, "and some very bad ones." I stared at her, trying to decide whether she was lying. "So what? She just decided to give you her house?" "No. She wanted someone to help maintain it. She said she didn't want you burdened, that you were busy with your own life." I felt heat rise in my chest. "That's a lie." Marianne flinched. "I'm not saying she didn't love you. She did. But she asked me to help her. I did the errands.
took her to appointments, handled her prescriptions. She said the house was too much for her. She wanted to make it official. Official meaning she signed it over to you? Yes. I took a step closer, while she had dementia. She was competent that day, Marianne said firmly. The lawyer confirmed it. I laughed. A bitter sound. Convenient. I didn't force.
Her, Mr. Wallace. I looked around. The stripped walls, the missing photos, the echo in the air where her laughter used to live. You erased her. Marianne's voice cracked. I'm trying to keep her memory alive. By erasing her family? She didn't answer. I left before I said something I couldn't take back. The screen door slammed behind me, echoing across the valley. The wind picked up, cold against my face. The mountains looked distant, the same ones she used to watch every morning from that swing. At the bottom of the driveway, Gus was waiting. His old Ford pickup idled by the mailbox. He stepped out as I approached. You found out, huh? He said quietly. Yeah, I muttered. You knew? He nodded. Saw her bring that woman around a lot near the end. Always figured she was helping. Didn't think she'd end up owning the place. Did Linda ever talk about her to you? Once. Said Marianne reminded her of someone. Never said who. I rubbed my temples. You think she knew what she was signing? Gus looked down at the gravel. Can't say. She was forgetful those last months. Lost her keys 3 times in 1 week. But she still cooks Sunday supper like clockwork. Hard to tell with folks when it starts. The wind carried the smell of rain. Somewhere down the valley a dog barked. Can you do me a favor? I asked. Check if she left any mail behind, maybe something personal. He thought for a moment, then nodded. I'll look. I thanked him and drove back to town, mind spinning through every conversation I'd had with Linda in those final months. The laughter, the certainty, the way she looked at me when she said, Don't worry, Drew. You'll always have a place here. Had that been a promise? Or just another memory slipping away? 3 days later, a small brown box showed up on my doorstep. No return address. Inside were 3 things: a key, a photograph, and a folded note in Linda's handwriting. The photo was old. Black and white, edges curled. Linda stood beside a teenage girl who looked vaguely familiar. Same chin, same eyes. On the back it said, Me and Marianne, 91 Hopewell Home. Hopewell Home. I'd never heard of it. The note read, If anything happens, tell Drew I did this for the right reasons. That line didn't sound like her. It sounded like someone trying to justify something. I called Gus again. You ever hear of Hopewell Home? Sure, he said. Was a group home back in the 90s. Closed down after some scandal. What kind of scandal? Abuse, I think. Staff under investigation. Why? Because I think my aunt knew someone from there. Maybe this Marianne. Gus went quiet. You think that woman was one of the kids? Maybe. But that doesn't explain why she'd give her the house. Maybe guilt, he said finally. Linda carried a lot of that. Around. About what? He sighed. About the things she couldn't fix. I stared at the photo again. Marianne's face was younger, unguarded. A hint of familiarity lingered, but I couldn't place it. If she'd known my aunt for 30 years, why did no one, not me, not anyone, ever hear her name? That night I typed Hopewell Home, Asheville, 1991 into Google. Only a few old articles came up. A state investigation, allegations of neglect, missing records. There was a list of children placed there temporarily after foster closures. Half the names were redacted. But one name wasn't. Marianne Fields, age 14. So it was true. She'd been there. That explained how they met. It didn't explain why my aunt gave her everything. I went back to the deed, scanning for details I'd missed. The witness signatures again. One name stood out this time. Catherine Miller. The same notary who'd signed off on the property transfer. I decided to find her. The next morning, I drove back up the mountain, parked outside a small office next to a hair salon. The sign read Miller Notary and Services. The bell chimed as I walked in. A woman in her 60s looked up from behind the counter. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Catherine Miller." "That's me. I have a question about a notarized deed you signed for Linda Carter a few months ago." Her brow furrowed. "You're Drew?" "Yeah." She hesitated. "I thought this might happen." "What do you mean?" "Linda told me she was leaving the place to a friend. I asked if her family knew. She said, they've got their own lives. This is my choice." She seemed clear-minded that day. "She seemed clear-minded?" Catherine sighed. "Mr. Wallace, I can't speak to her health, but she knew her name, the date, the property details. She even joked about the leaky roof." "Did she sign willingly?" "She did." I leaned on the counter. "Then why leave me a note saying she did it for the right reasons?" "What right reasons?" The notary's eyes softened. "Maybe because she thought she was paying back a debt." "What kind of debt?" But Catherine just shook her head. "I'm not the one who can answer that." Back in the car, the rain started again, heavy and warm. I sat there with the photo in my hand, tracing the edge of Linda's smile. The woman I knew had always been the caretaker. For neighbors, for me, for anyone who needed help. Maybe she'd been trying to right an old wrong. Still, why keep it a secret? Why leave me blindsided? As I turned the key in the ignition, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You shouldn't dig into this, Drew." She made her choice. Let it be. No name, no context. Just the kind of message that makes you sure you're not done yet. The rain didn't stop for 2 days after that text. Every drop against my apartment window felt like a tap on my shoulder. A reminder that someone, somewhere, knew exactly what I was doing and wanted me to stop. I tried to shake it off. I told myself it was probably Mary Ann, or maybe someone from the church. But deep down, I knew that tone. It wasn't a plea, it was a warning. By Friday, I'd stopped pretending I could ignore it. I called the number back. It went straight to voicemail. No name, no greeting, just that robotic voice saying the inbox was full. I stared at the screen for a long minute before setting it down. Then I reached for the key Linda had left in that box. The metal was old brass, etched with a faded H, hemlock. Not the house. I already had that key. This one was different, smaller, like it belonged to a drawer or a box. For the next hour, I searched through every file, every corner of the envelope the note came in. Nothing. Then I noticed something I'd missed before. The cardboard at the bottom of the shipping box wasn't flat. It had been glued over another layer. I peeled it back, and beneath was a thin metal storage key tag, Asheville Storage and Supply, Unit 47, and a faded receipt dated 3 months before Linda died. Whatever she'd left me wasn't just a memory. It was a secret she didn't trust to paper. The storage lot sat on the edge of town, behind a feed store and an old sign that hadn't lit up in years. The clerk barely looked up when I came in. "Unit 47, he muttered. "Been paid up for the next year? Keys yours?" "Yeah," I said, flashing it. He slid the ledger across the counter. "Sign and go." Inside, the air smelled like rust and mildew. The fluorescent lights flickered every few seconds, leaving the rows of metal doors in a slow pulse of shadow and glow. When I reached 47, my hand shook just a little. I turned the key, heard the soft click, and pulled up the door. It wasn't packed, just neat, deliberate. One wooden trunk, a few boxes labeled church, taxes, letters, and a small desk pushed against the wall. The trunk caught my attention first. It was the kind of thing you'd see in an old army surplus store. green paint chipped off the sides, leather handles cracked with age. When I opened it, I found three things: a thick binder marked Hopewell, 1991, a Polaroid album, a folder with the name M. Fields written in my aunt's handwriting. My pulse kicked up. I sat on the concrete floor and opened the binder first. It was full of reports, photocopied pages from the county archives, news clippings, letters. The words state investigation, neglect allegations, missing case notes repeated like a mantra. There were photos of the facility, rows of bunk beds, peeling paint, kids lined up by height for inspection. Linda had circled one article headline in red: Hopewell Home faces shutdown after whistleblower testimony. The whistleblower's name? Linda Carter. I sat there in silence. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until my chest burned. The story started to piece together in fragments. Linda must have worked there, maybe as a nurse or volunteer, before I was even born. Marianne had been a kid under her care. When the investigation blew open, Linda testified against the administrators. She'd always said she left nursing because of politics. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was the kind that never lets go. The next folder, M. Fields, was thinner but heavier in a different way. It held letters, all written in careful, slanted script. Some were dated years ago, others recent. I recognized Linda's handwriting, but the replies, printed neatly in black pen, were Marianne's. I don't remember much from Hopewell, one letter said, just the smell of bleach and your voice telling me it wasn't my fault. Another, you were the only one who came back for us. I still dream about that night. Sometimes I wonder what my life would have been if you hadn't taken us out of there. There was no return address, just initials, MF. The letters went on for years. It was a friendship, maybe more like a mother-daughter tether stretched over decades. Then, about a year ago, the tone shifted. Linda, I can't keep up with the rent anymore. The clinic says I'm not improving fast enough to work. I don't want to ask, but I don't know where else to go. Then Linda's reply, you don't have to ask, sweetheart. You'll always have a home here. My throat closed. That line, you'll always have a home here. The same words she'd told me. She hadn't lied. She'd just been talking to someone else. I spent the rest of the day digging through that storage unit. Most of it was mundane. Tax files, receipts, a few photo albums, but one envelope tucked behind the desk drawer stopped me cold. It was sealed, marked, "To Drew." Open only if you can't understand. I tore it open. Drew, if you're reading this, it means you've found the paperwork and probably think I lost my mind. I didn't. I just didn't want to explain something I'd spent 30 years trying to forgive myself for. You were always my boy. But long before you came along, there was another. Her name was Marianne. She was 14 when they took her from her mother. I promised I'd get her out of that place. I did. But not soon enough. The things that happened at Hopewell weren't her fault. They weren't mine either. But I carried them like they were. When the state shut it down, the children scattered. I lost track of her for years. Then she found me again, sick, scared, and alone. I couldn't say no. You have a life, Drew. You have strength. Marianne had nothing but ghosts. That house won't heal her, but maybe it can give her a place to stop running. Please, don't hate me for choosing her this time. Love, Aunt Linda. I read it 3 times, each word sinking deeper until the letters blurred. The fluorescent light above me hummed louder, like it was filling the silence Linda left behind. By the time I drove back to town, night had fallen. The rain had stopped, but everything still smelled like it. Wet asphalt, pine needles, the faint sweetness of damp leaves. I parked outside my apartment and just sat there, engine ticking, the letter trembling in my hands. I wanted to hate her. I wanted to say she betrayed me, but part of me understood. the kind of understanding that burns more than anger ever could. Still, it didn't answer everything. Because if Linda had chosen Marianne out of guilt, why had Marianne warned me to stop digging? The next morning I called her. She picked up on the second ring. "Drew." "Funny," I said. "You didn't save my number, but you knew I'd call." "I figured you would. You left a message last week. Let it be. I was trying to protect you." "From what? The truth?" A pause. "From what it'll cost you to find it. Don't talk in riddles, Marianne. I found the storage unit." Silence. Then, "So you know." "I know she saved you," I said, "and I know she gave you my house." Her voice broke. "It was never yours." That hit harder than it should have. "She told me it would be. She told me it was home," she said. "Do you think I wanted this? Do you think I asked for her to sign it over?" "I don't know what to think." "Then stop trying to," she whispered. "She's gone, Drew. Let her rest." And then she hung up. That night, I couldn't stop replaying her words. It was never yours. Maybe she was right. Maybe I'd built my life around a promise that was never meant for me to keep. But something still didn't fit. Linda's tone in the letter, the secrecy of that storage unit, the missing timeline between her last hospital visit and the transfer date. I started digging again. I went back through every document from the binder, cross-referencing dates. One thing stood out. The notary signature on the deed, Catherine Miller, was dated 3 days after Linda's last hospitalization. According to her medical record, she'd been released that morning. But here's the thing. That hospital stay had been in Charlotte, not Asheville. And Catherine's notary office was in Asheville. Linda couldn't have signed that document in person, not unless someone brought it to her bedside. And the witness signature on the deed? Marianne's. I drove to the hospital the next day, pretending to be a relative requesting old medical records. The nurse at the front desk, a kind woman with gray hair, frowned at my request, but eventually pulled up the digital archive. "She was discharged on February 12th, the nurse said. Doctor signed her release at 10:37 a.m. "Was there any note about visitors that day?" I asked. She scrolled. "Yes. 2 names recorded. One's a Catherine Miller. The other..." She paused. "Marianne Fields." "Thank you," I said quietly. Outside, the morning sun felt sharper than usual. I stood in the parking lot, the pieces sliding into place in ways I didn't like. Marianne had brought the notary to the hospital. Maybe it had been legitimate. Maybe Linda had truly wanted it. But if she'd been medicated or confused, that changed everything. That night, I sent Gus a text. "Need to meet. Urgent." He replied, "Come by tomorrow morning. Coffee's on." Gus's porch was damp with dew when I arrived. He handed me a mug before I even sat down. "You look like hell, son." "Thanks. Been earning it. You find something?" I nodded, slid the letter across the table. I found out she testified at Hopewell. She knew Marianne from back then. But the deed, it was signed at the hospital. Marianne and the notary were both there. Gus's eyebrows furrowed. "You think she tricked her?" "I don't know," I said. "But Linda left me that note like she was scared I'd find out." He took a sip, thinking. "Linda was proud, Drew, but near the end she was scared of something. I remember she started double-locking the doors. Said she kept hearing voices on the porch at night." "Voices?" He nodded. "I figured it was the meds, but one morning she told me she saw a woman outside the window. When I went out, there were footprints in the mud." "Marianne? Could be. I never got a look." I leaned forward. "Gus, I think she was being pressured." He set the mug down. "If that's true, you need proof. Otherwise, it's just grief talking." "I'll get it." Later that day, I called a lawyer in town. Someone who'd handled elder care disputes. Her name was Erin Walsh. When I told her the situation, she didn't sound surprised. "Happens more often than you'd think," she said. Elderly person transfers property under influence of caretaker. If we can prove she lacked full capacity or that the other party benefited from coercion, we can contest.
What kind of proof? Medical evaluations, witness statements, any communication suggesting pressure. I have a letter, but it doesn't say she was forced. Then you'll need something more concrete. Her voice softened. Drew, this could get ugly. You sure you want to open this box? I thought of the text message, of Marianne's warning. Yeah, I said. It's already open. That night, I went back to the storage unit one last time. The air was colder, the fluorescent hum louder. I was about to leave when I noticed something taped under the desk. A small cassette recorder, the kind people used in the 90s for dictation. It had a sticky note labeled H. I pressed play. Linda's voice came through, faint but steady. This is Linda Carter. February 10th, 2024. I'm recording this because I don't know who to trust.
Anymore. Marianne's been asking about the house. She says it's for practical reasons, insurance, taxes, but I think she's scared I'll change my mind. She's been different lately, quiet, watchful. I don't want to believe she'd hurt me, but... The tape clicked off mid-sentence. My hand shook as I rewound it and played it again. Her tone was clear, lucid, not confused, not forgetful. That meant she'd been aware and afraid. I pulled the tape out, pocketed it, and walked back into the night. The mountain air bit at my skin, but all I could think about was that last unfinished sentence. I don't want to believe she'd hurt me, but she did. Or she might have. Either way, the truth wasn't finished talking. I didn't sleep that night. The cassette recorder sat on the kitchen counter, still warm from replaying Linda's voice half a dozen times. Each time I hit play, I hoped maybe I'd misheard it, that she'd meant something benign, something ordinary. But her tone wasn't confusion. It was fear. And fear didn't fit the version of her I knew. By dawn, I'd made up my mind. I was going to the police. Not to accuse, not yet, but to document. I figured if Marianne really had taken advantage of her, if Linda's signature had been forced or faked, I needed a paper trail. The kind that didn't vanish quietly like whispers in a mountain town. The precinct sat across from a diner that always smelled like bacon grease. The officer at the front desk barely looked older than me. His badge read, Officer Benton. He leaned on the counter as I explained, trying not to yawn. So you're saying your aunt gave away her property before passing, he said. And now you think it wasn't voluntary. I have a recording, I said, dated 2 days before she signed the deed. She says she's scared of Marianne Fields. That made him straighten a little. You have that with you? I slid the cassette player across the counter. He glanced at it like I'd handed him a relic from a museum. You got the digital version? I can convert it if you need, but the original's right there. You can hear her voice. Benton disappeared into the back. 10 minutes passed, then 20. When he came back, his face had changed. Alert now, cautious. Okay, he said. You should file a report. It won't open a criminal case yet, but it'll flag it for review. I nodded. And the tape? We'll log it. Might take a few days to make an official copy. Something in me tensed. You'll keep it safe? He met my eyes. That's our job. Still, when I walked out, my gut twisted. Because that was the thing about small towns. Sometimes keeping things safe meant keeping them quiet. By afternoon, I drove back up the mountain to see Gus again. He was out in the shed, sharpening tools, country radio murmuring under the buzz of the grinder. He looked up when I pulled in. Morning, Drew, he said. You look worse than yesterday. I turned in the tape, I said, to the cops. His eyebrows lifted. Good. I think. He set down the file. You don't trust them. I trust them to log it, not to act. He wiped his hands. So what's the next move? I need proof that signature wasn't hers. Gus nodded slowly. You'll need a handwriting expert. Charlotte's got a few. Ain't cheap, though. I'll find the money. He gave me a look that said he admired the stubbornness but pitied it too. You really think you're going to win this? I don't know. But if she was scared, someone should have done something. Someone still should. He poured coffee into a tin mug and handed it over. Linda'd be proud of you for caring. But she'd also tell you to be careful. Marianne's not some stranger drifting through. Folks around here like her. Like her? She runs a daycare out of that house now. Calls it Hemlock Kids. Whole bunch of parents drop their toddlers off there. The mug stopped halfway to my lips. She turned Linda's house into a daycare? Gus nodded. Every morning, line of SUVs up the drive. That detail hit harder than anything else. I could picture it. Tiny shoes by the door where Linda's slippers used to be, laughter echoing through the same halls where she'd once kept photo albums and cross-stitch frames. It wasn't illegal, but it was wrong in every way that mattered. The next day, I parked a block away from Hemlock Road and waited. At 7:45, the first car pulled in, a minivan with a baby on board sticker. A woman walked her daughter to the porch. Marianne opened the door, smiling, waving. Her voice carried, warm and practiced. Another parent arrived, then another. By 8:30, half a dozen cars had cycled through. Every parent smiled at her like she was family. When the last left, I got out of my car and walked up the drive. She saw me before I reached the porch. "Drew," she said, quiet but firm, "you shouldn't be here."
You shouldn't be running a daycare in my aunt's house. Her jaw tightened. It's licensed, inspected, safe. I'm sure it is, I said. That doesn't make it right. Linda was scared of you 2 days before she signed that deed, I cut in. She froze. The color drained from her face. What did you say? I have the recording I said. You want to hear it? Her voice wavered. She must have been confused. She had moments. Not that day. She knew exactly who she was scared of. For a moment, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Not guilt, exactly, but something close. Then it was gone. Leave, Drew, she whispered. Please. You think I won't fight this? She looked past me, toward the tree line. Her tone dropped low. You don't understand what she did, what we did. Then make me understand. She shook her head. Not here. Too many ears. Then when? Tomorrow. Dusk. Old Chapel Road. Behind the cemetery. Her voice trembled on that last word, like saying it scraped something raw. I barely made it through work the next day. My manager asked if I was okay. I lied. Every hour crawled until dusk. The chapel sat on a narrow ridge, half swallowed by ivy. The old cemetery behind it was a slope of tilted stones and brittle grass. When I pulled up, the air smelled of wet moss and engine oil. Marianne's Camry was already parked under the oak tree. She stepped out when I approached, arms folded, eyes darting. I shouldn't have called you, she said, but you deserve to know. Then tell me. She looked around once more before speaking. Your aunt didn't just testify against Hopewell. She kept something from them. Records. Names. She said they'd gone missing, but she took them. Kids who'd been transferred to other homes. Some of them weren't legal adoptions. Illegal how? They were sold, Drew, she said. On paper it looked clean, but the home director, he was running kids through fake placements for money. Linda found out. She tried to shut it down. They threatened her. My throat went dry. Who's they? The director's partner, a woman named Catherine Miller. The notary. My stomach twisted. She wasn't just notarizing papers, Marianne said. She was part of it. Linda had proof, files, testimonies, but she was scared. She hid them somewhere. Said if anyone ever found out, she'd make sure those kids were safe first. Safe how? That's what she never told me. I stared at her, struggling to piece it together. You think Catherine's still involved somehow? I know she is. She came to the hospital with me that day. She said Linda needed to sign over the house to make things clean. I didn't understand what she meant until later. You let her talk Linda into it? Marianne's eyes filled. I didn't let her. I was trying to help. But after Linda died, Catherine told me to stay quiet. Said if I didn't, I'd lose everything. And you believed her. She sent people to my house, Drew. I have a son. You think I was going to risk that? Her voice cracked, the fight leaving it. I thought giving her the house would make it stop. Make what stop? She wiped her eyes. Whatever Catherine was hiding there? I took a step closer. You think there's something in the house? I know there is. I tried to look once. The floorboards, in the back room. But every time I got close, something... She stopped herself, shaking her head. You shouldn't have gone to the police. If Catherine hears... A car engine cut through the air. We both turned. Headlights crept down the gravel path toward the chapel. Marianne went pale. She followed me, she whispered. Oh, God. Who? But I already knew. The car stopped 10 feet away. The door opened. Catherine Miller stepped out. That same polite, measured face I remembered from the notary office, but now her eyes were cold. Evening, Drew, she said. And Marianne, I was hoping we could all talk. Marianne backed away. Don't. Relax, Catherine said, voice steady. I'm not here to hurt anyone, just to make sure no one misunderstands the past. The past, Becky? I said. You forged a signature. Your aunt signed willingly, she replied. She just didn't understand why it mattered. She was scared of you, I said. I heard her say it. Catherine smiled faintly. People fear what they don't control. Linda made choices. So did I. What choices? Keeping those children alive, she said softly. You think the state was going to help them? You think the system cared? Marianne's voice cracked. You sold them. I placed them, Catherine said, and Linda helped, until she decided her conscience was worth more than their safety. I felt my skin crawl. You're insane. No, Mr. Wallace. I'm practical. The house was insurance. Containment. Everything we needed was under those floors. Until you started digging. She took a step forward. Walk away. Both of you. You'll live longer that way. I met her stare. You're threatening me? I'm offering you peace. Marianne whispered, She's not bluffing. Catherine's expression softened. Drew, Linda was fond of you. She wanted you to stay out of this. Be smarter than she was. Then she turned, walked back to her car, and drove off like nothing happened. When the tail lights disappeared, I finally exhaled. Marianne leaned against the chapel wall, shaking. She won't stop, she said. Not if you keep digging. Then I'll find what she's hiding before she does. Drew, no. Whatever's under those floors, it's what Linda died protecting. And I'm done letting other people decide who gets to bury it. I walked toward my car, the gravel crunching beneath my boots. Marianne called after me, her voice thin and frightened. Please, she said, if you go back there, you won't be the same. Maybe she was right, but I'd already crossed that line the moment I opened the envelope. And by the time the sun rose over Hemlock Road again, I'd be standing on the porch with a crowbar in my hand. The morning air on Hemlock Road was brittle and pale, like the light hadn't decided whether to stay. The house sat quiet, blinds drawn, no sign of Marianne or the kid she watched. A single tricycle leaned against the porch rail, bright red plastic, dew beating on its handle. I parked by the mailbox and killed the engine. The silence that followed felt heavier than any sound. The crowbar rested on the passenger seat, not for violence, for the floors, for the truth that had been nailed down and forgotten. When I stepped out,
Gravel crunched under my boots. I half expected someone, Catherine, a neighbor, even the cops, to stop me. But the only thing moving was a wind chime at the corner of the porch, turning slow. I unlocked the front door with the key Linda had given me months before her death. She must have known I'd come back. Inside, the house smelled faintly of bleach and oatmeal. Daycare toys were scattered across the rug, stuffed animals, blocks, a half-drawn crayon picture taped to the fridge. But beneath all that new life was something older. Dust in the corners, a floorboard that still creaked near the hallway arch. I stood there, looking around, every memory sharpening like a blade. The time Linda let me paint my handprint on that wall. The Thanksgiving we burned the turkey and laughed until the smoke alarm screamed. All gone, buried under someone else's version of home. I walked to the back room, the one Marianne had mentioned. The air was cooler there, heavy with the scent of cedar and something metallic. A wooden crib sat near the window, empty. Against the far wall, a rug covered half the floorboards. I pulled it back. Underneath was a faint outline. A rectangle of wood slightly darker than the rest, like a hatch. I crouched, tracing the edges with my fingers. My aunt had been meticulous. She wouldn't have left it visible unless she wanted someone, maybe me, to find it. The crowbar slid in easily under the seam. One lift, one hard pull, and the board popped loose. The smell that rose up wasn't rot. It was paper. Old, dry, sealed air, like the inside of an attic. Beneath the board was a shallow compartment lined with plastic sheeting. Inside, a metal box, no larger than a shoebox, rusted latch, combination lock, Linda's secret. I dragged it out, heart hammering. The lock wasn't much. I pried it open with the crowbar, careful not to dent the lid. The inside was packed with files, manila folders, all labeled with the same careful handwriting I'd seen in her recipes and notes. Hopewell transfers, 1991, 1993. I flipped one open. Each file had a child's name, a photo, a placement address, and a payment record. Most had stamps that said, closed, adopted. But others had handwritten notes in red, unverified, no record in registry, possible double file. There were dozens, maybe hundreds. And stapled to the last folder was a letter, addressed to the county district attorney, never mailed. If you're reading this, then something has happened to me. The documents enclose detail an adoption fraud scheme carried out under the direction of Hopewell Homes Board and its former notary, Catherine Miller. I testified against the home in 1992, but withheld these files to protect the surviving children. I now believe that was a mistake. Should anything happen to me, I want this turned over to the authorities immediately. Linda Carter. I read the signature twice, my throat tightening. There it was, the piece that could ruin Catherine, the reason Marianne said she'd been threatened, and the reason Linda had been afraid. I took out my phone, snapped photos of every page, every label, every line. I wasn't going to let these disappear into some evidence locker to be misplaced. Then I heard the floor creak. The sound came from the hallway, slow, deliberate. I turned, heart jumping, and saw the shadow before the person, Marianne. She stood in the doorway, pale, eyes wide. "Drew," she whispered, "you shouldn't be here." I didn't lower the folder. "You knew about this."
"I told you," she said, voice shaking. "I tried to find it. You don't understand what's at stake." "I understand enough. Catherine's been lying for decades. This is proof." Marianne stepped forward, trembling. "And if you show that to the police, do you know what happens? Every one of those kids, grown now, families of their own, their lives get dragged back into the system. Names in papers, Investigations, trials. That's not your call. It was Linda's, she snapped, and she chose silence. No, I said quietly, holding up the letter. She changed her mind. Marianne froze. Her eyes flicked to the page, to Linda's signature, and something inside her broke. You don't get it, she said, voice cracking. She was trying to protect me. From what? Marianne swallowed hard. I wasn't just a kid there, Drew. I was one of the ones Catherine placed, illegally. My file's in that box. She sold me to a family who didn't keep me long. I ran. Linda found me years later. She said she'd fix it, but she never could. So she gave me the house instead. Said I deserved one good thing in my life. She took another step closer, tears welling. And now you're going to take even that. I stared at her, really looked at her, the exhaustion under her eyes, the tightness in her hands, the way every word came out like it scraped her throat raw. I'm not here to take your home, I said finally. I'm here to make sure Catherine doesn't destroy anyone else's. Marianne shook her head. You don't know her like I do. She won't let you walk away. She already tried to scare me, I said. Didn't work. This isn't about fear, Marianne said. It's about what she can erase. Before I could ask what she meant, the front door banged open. Drew Wallace, a woman's voice called. Put whatever you took on the table. Catherine. I stepped into the hallway. She stood there, framed by sunlight, one hand on her hip, the other holding something I didn't like the look of. A small black pistol, half hidden in her jacket pocket. Marianne gasped. Catherine, don't... Relax, Catherine said smoothly. I just want what's mine. Yours? I said. You mean Linda's? Or the kids you sold? Her expression barely changed. You shouldn't throw around words you don't understand. Linda understood them, I said, raising the letter. Enough to document everything. Her gaze flicked to the paper, then back to me. You have no idea what you're holding. Those records, they're dangerous. They destroy people. They already destroyed her, I said, and they'll destroy you. Her jaw tightened. You think anyone's going to believe the word of a grieving nephew over an entire system? You'll hand that box over, and you'll forget this happened. Marianne stepped between us, shaking. Don't. Please. It's over, Catherine. Catherine's voice dropped. You don't decide when it's over. For a moment, nobody moved. The light cut through the window, glinting off the metal of the gun. My pulse thudded in my ears. The house, Linda's house, seemed to hold its breath. Then the floorboard by the window creaked. Gus. He stood there, shotgun in hand, face grim. Ma'am, he said, you might want to rethink that. Catherine froze. The moment stretched, brittle and sharp. Put it down, he said again. She hesitated, then slowly lowered the pistol and set it on the counter. That's better, Gus said, moving closer. Now why don't we call someone who still remembers how to enforce the law? Catherine's eyes flicked toward me, cold, calculating. You have no idea what doors you just opened, Mr. Wallace. Then let's open them all, I said. She didn't reply, just smiled, a small, terrifying curve of her mouth, and said, You'll wish you hadn't. By evening, the sheriff's car lights painted the trees red and blue. Catherine was led out in handcuffs, silent. I handed over the files to the detective, though not before sending every photo to my cloud drive, 2 backups, and Gus's email. Marianne stood on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the ground. When the last cruiser pulled away, she finally spoke. She'll be out, she said softly. People like her always get out. Maybe, I said, but this time, there'll be light on her when she does. She looked up. You think that fixes anything? I sighed. No, but it's a start. She nodded once, then looked toward the mountains, the same view Linda loved, You know, she said, she used to say you were the only person who ever made her feel forgiven. She said that? Yeah, Marianne whispered. Maybe that's why she left it to me, so you wouldn't have to carry her ghosts. I didn't answer. I just looked at the house, quiet now, the porch light humming, and thought about the kind of forgiveness that costs too.
Much to give. The following week, the sheriff's office called. They confirmed the documents had been authenticated, that Catherine was being charged with fraud, coercion, and destruction of public records. A full investigation into Hopewell's past was reopening. The news spread fast. Reporters showed up on Hemlock Road. Parents pulled their kids from Marianne's daycare. She closed it within days. When I drove up to see her, the house was empty again. Furniture gone, blinds half drawn, air thick with dust, and the faint echo of laughter that no longer belonged here. I found her in the back room, sitting cross-legged on the bare floor. "You came to say goodbye," she said without looking up. "I came to make sure you were okay." She smiled sadly. "I'll be fine. Maybe not today, but someday. You could stay. We could—" She shook her head. "No, this place isn't mine anymore. It's hers. Always was. I think she wanted it that way." I didn't argue. Some things aren't meant to be fought past a certain point. Before I left, she pressed something into my hand, the same brass key Linda had mailed to me. "You keep it," she said. "She trusted you more than anyone." The key felt warm against my palm, as if it had been waiting for this. That night, I sat on the porch under the same mountain stars that had hung above Linda for years. The quiet was deeper than I remembered. No laughter, no voices, just the wind moving through trees like breath. I thought about everything that had been hidden. The lies, the guilt, the misplaced promises. I thought about how a house can hold so many versions of the same truth, depending on who's telling it. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel anger. I just felt tired, but not alone. The next morning, I planned to drive back to Greenville. I packed the last of my things, locked the front door, and slid the key into my pocket. But before I left the driveway, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "She's gone, but the others aren't. Look deeper." No name, no context, just that same undertone as before, like someone watching from behind the curtains of the past, waiting for me to choose between peace and the truth. And I knew which one I was going to pick. The message came through at 6:43 a.m. Just 5 words. "She's gone, but the others aren't." And I knew immediately that whoever sent it wasn't talking about Catherine. I sat in the driver's seat of my truck, with the engine idling, the house in the rearview mirror. The text sat on the screen like it was breathing. I waited for a follow-up, but nothing came. No name, no reply when I typed back, "Who is this?" Just that blinking message sent confirmation, and the faint weight of dread in my chest. I should have driven home. Instead, I turned the truck around and headed back up Hemlock Road. The house looked different in the morning light, stripped of mystery, smaller somehow. A for sale sign leaned against the porch post, half painted, like Marianne had changed her mind halfway through. The front door was unlocked. I stepped inside. Dust hung in the air. The silence felt hollow, too big. Only one thing had changed since I'd left. A single envelope sat on the kitchen counter, my name written across it in Linda's handwriting. Not a copy, the original. Inside was a single page. "Drew, if this letter finds you, it means you didn't stop when I asked you to. That's good. You were never the kind to let something rest half told. I couldn't protect them all, but someone still can. There's another key in the drawer by the pantry. It opens the cabin by the quarry. I kept the rest there. The names Catherine didn't want found. Be careful who you share them with. The past has long arms." Love, Linda. I looked up at the pantry. The drawer she mentioned was wedged halfway open, dust on the handle. Inside, under a few stray screws, was another key, smaller than the others, with a paper tag that said simply Q. The quarry was 15 miles south, tucked behind what used to be a lumber yard. I remembered it vaguely from childhood. Linda had taken me fishing near there once, though she'd never let me near the fence line. Said it wasn't safe. When I arrived, the gate hung half off its hinges. The gravel road wound through the woods until the trees broke open to reveal the pit. Wide, silent, water pooled dark and still at the bottom. To the right, half hidden under vines, was the cabin. The door creaked when I pushed it open. Inside smelled of pine and dust. A single beam of sunlight cut through the boarded window, landing on a desk in the corner. On top of it, another metal lockbox, newer than the one under the floorboards. The key fit perfectly. Inside were folders labeled Adoptive Ledger 2 and Hopewell Continuation, 1994 to 1996, and beneath those, a flash drive. No letter this time, no explanation, just cold, organized evidence. I sat at the desk, plugged the drive into my laptop, and waited for the screen to wake. There were scanned documents, names, dates, hundreds of them, but there was also a folder labeled Audio. I clicked it. Linda's voice filled the room again, but this time she didn't sound scared. She sounded deliberate, resigned. If anyone finds this, you'll think I'm complicit. Maybe I am. I signed things I shouldn't have, thinking I was saving children. We thought those placements were mercy, not trafficking. But the money changed hands too many times, and the names vanished. Catherine called it clean paperwork. I called it hell. When the home shut down, I kept what I could. I wanted to fix it, but they were everywhere. Hospitals, charities, courts. Too many hands in one pot. If I'd spoken sooner, I'd be dead by now. So I hid it. Not to protect Catherine, to protect the kids until they were old, enough to choose what to remember. But if someone's listening to this, it means she came for me anyway. The audio cracked, then quieted. Linda drew a shaky breath. Drew, if it's you, know this. Not all debts are meant to be collected. Some are meant to be confessed. You're my only chance at that. Find them. Tell them the truth gently. And don't let anyone tell you this was just paperwork. It was people. Then silence. For a long time, I couldn't move. The screen stayed lit. The audio timer frozen at 0742, like even time refused to move past what she'd said. I spent the next 3 weeks piecing everything together. With Aaron, the lawyer, I cataloged every file, every name, every date. She warned me not to go public until the DA's office could verify everything, but the scope was too large to keep buried. Dozens of families across 3 states, hundreds of falsified adoptions, money moving through shell organizations under the guise of charitable transfers. The deeper we dug, the more names appeared. Judges, agency directors, politicians who'd looked the other way. It was an entire machine that had once been hidden behind a smiling logo and a children's home brochure. And Linda had been the first gear to jam it. That's why she was silenced. That's why the house had been transferred away. Catherine hadn't been afraid of me. She'd been afraid of Linda's paper trail. The last thing I found weeks later wasn't in the files. It was in an email buried in the flash drive's archive, sent from Linda to herself. Subject line, Hopewell, final record. The body was just one sentence. Forgiveness doesn't mean silence. It means handing the truth to someone who can carry it. When the full story broke, after the state attorney announced an investigation into the old Hopewell network, the media called it the Mountain Adoptions case. Catherine's trial drew cameras from all over. Marianne testified, shaking but unbroken. She told the court what Linda had done for her, how she'd been one of the placements, how she'd been reclaimed not by law but by kindness. When it was over, the judge sentenced Catherine to 15 years for fraud, coercion, and obstruction. Not enough for what she'd done, but enough to make the silence crack. Afterward, Marianne disappeared from town. She sent me one postcard. No return address, just a picture of the Blue Ridge skyline and 5 words on the back. She'd be proud of you. A year passed. The house at 114 Hemlock Road stood quiet again. I kept the porch light on, not for ghosts, for memory. Sometimes, parents who'd been part of the old adoptions would come by, leave flowers on the steps. Sometimes former Hopewell kids reached out looking for records or closure. I gave them what I could. Other times, I'd sit out there at dusk, listening to the wind move through the pines and thinking about how one house had held so many lives, how every board, every nail carried the weight of promises broken and finally made whole. Linda had been right. It was never about the property. It was about the legacy of what we do when we can't fix the past, whether we bury it or dig until our hands bleed. I still have the key on my ring. Brass, worn smooth. Every time it catches the light, I think of her voice on that tape. Calm, tired, but sure. And I think maybe the house is exactly where it's supposed to be. Not just mine, not just hers, but standing for anyone who ever needed proof that truth, once unearthed, doesn't rot. It breathes. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real-life confessions and emotional journeys like this one.